Hello. I think this is working here. You know what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to check on Facebook. I always check on my desktop. I'm going to check on my desktop. Um, and Facebook is not going to sneak one by me this time. In the past, Facebook has, well, as of late, it's been making it. Okay. So for today, it's saying that my friends get to watch this live. I did the interview last week with Leon Vanderpool, and I was like, "Oh, it's weird. There's not a lot of comments coming in um, from from yeah. There's just not a lot of comments coming in on my public feed." And I was like, "Okay, maybe it was late. Nobody's watching it." Turns out the interview was locked on my Facebook profile, and people who wanted to watch it didn't get to watch it live, which was really unfortunate. So this has happened to me a few times on Facebook where I just launched the live and and then I'm like, oh, like nobody commented at all during the whole thing. It's because nobody could watch it. So I'm learning. I am learning how to navigate changes. So, anyways, um, I've got a fun topic tonight to explore. And it's interesting this this topic of like bringing more play and joy in your life, as really it's for anyone, but we're going to talk about the serious people out there. If you check in with yourself, do you take yourself a little bit too seriously? Do you got things meticulously planned out? Or one that's probably very similar to me, does your joy and play get put behind everything else? Does your joy and play get put behind your work? Uh, that's the one that sort of resonates for me. Your work, basically the thought here is like, if joy and play are sort of getting put on the back burner of everything in life, is it time to have a discussion? Is it time to explore this a little further together? And as I said in the comments, it's just literally a conversation at this point because I don't have all the answers for you. But I'm willing to explore and I'm willing to share, what's been present for me as of late. So I would say that this, as in coaching and being coached, this idea has been sort of reflected to me over the years. Not as bluntly as like, hey, you're too serious, like bring more joy and play into your life. But over time, it's definitely shown up. And if you're watching this live, feel free to comment or share your experience as well of how this goes in life for you. And there's been two experiences as of late where this has kind of shown up for me. The first was when I was in Costa Rica on a coaching retreat with a bunch of amazing coaches. It was such an awesome experience. And Adam Quiney, who co-leads the retreat with his wife Bay. Adam and I were sitting down, at some point in the evening, and he said, "Hey, like, what do you do for fun?" I don't know how we got to that part of the discussion. And it was funny because, like, in that moment, unconsciously, I think that there was a part of me that's like, oh, I was really stumped in that moment of like, what do I actually do for fun? I mean, I do fun things, but like, what could I actually claim here? And it kind of like struck me in that moment because I was like, okay, first of all, like I'm trying to impress, in some small fashion. I want to think of like the cool things that I do. And I got some elevation on this, or I was able to sit with this later on. But that was sort of a moment where I was like, yeah, like, do I really like not do a lot of fun things? I feel like I do fun, playful things, but like, is that not really like how I navigate my life? So I'm curious for you, like, just from hearing that, like, how would you respond if somebody was in conversation with you and is like, "Hey, Bob, what do you do for fun in your life?" do you feel like you'd be like, yeah, I got, an answer that I could share, I do all these cool things, or are you more on in the camp of like, maybe there's some room for improvement here? And then the other place that showed up actually was in a coaching conversation I was in, same program, uh, last week, where I came to a realization in a coaching session that, oh, um, to give you a bit of a backstory, when I first, probably my first year of coaching, I got a reflection that it's like, hey, you know, kind of seems like for you in life, work comes first. Work is sort of the bedrock of what you're doing, and like the fun, the play is sort of like the thing you get on the side. It's the thing, um, it's the thing that you do once all the work is done. So, and for somebody like me, the serious individual that I am, there's always work to do. There's always things that I could be doing, which leaves actually little room for play. So now if I come back to this coaching session that I was in, it was really interesting because um, the question that was posed to me in that session was like, "Hey, how is this experience going for you now?" And the the response that I had was like, "Oh, I kind of feel like I'm making this very serious." And if I was to sort of share that as a reflection of life, that I'm often very serious in the beginning of something. Like if I want to get the facts, or if like I'm wanting to figure somebody out, like I want to get all the details on the table. And then once I've kind of like done that and I can sort of ease into the process, I feel a little bit lighter. I feel like a little bit more engaged. So again, it's kind of interesting. Like that same dynamic is at play, where the play and the joy comes second. It's secondary to how how life goes. So that gives you a little bit of backstory, and I'm going to share that this idea of play and joy. This is a part of the breakthrough that I'm creating right now. It's really been a part of the breakthrough I've been creating these last few years. But in this space right now, it's a place that I'm actively in the process of shifting in my life. A breakthrough would be described as something that would be impossible to create in your life. So, what would a breakthrough in joy and play look like? It's kind of sad when you think about it, like, oh, that's actually the breakthrough that's there for me. And I imagine for many others out in the world, I don't believe that I'm the only one in this camp. And so it's worth checking, right? Like, where do you stand on this continuum? Do you live a life where joy and play get to like be sort of at the front, where life is sort of lived from that place, or do you find like joy and play are sort of the aftermath? It's the thing that you get, kind of like I was speaking to, when all the work and the seriousness is complete. Um, so let me know if you have any thoughts around this, anything that's sort of stirring up for you, in this discussion. So I'm gonna just touch on a few points that you know that created some awarenesses for me, and I'd love for others who are watching this to just share, like, hey, what are some ways that you empower joy and play in your life? Like, what does this actually look like for you? So the first place, which I wrote this down as a point, I'm like, oh, it's actually not really like that impactful to speak to, but hey, I put it down, so I will speak to it. Is not feeling like you have to do this to impress anyone. And sure, I'll speak to that because I imagine that sometimes when we think of ourselves as individuals, we can have a lot of judgment and a lot of guilt as to how we're showing up. And oftentimes it's probably going to be because we feel like we should be somebody, or we should be something, or we should live this crazy, adventurous life so as to get approval. And so it's funny that I think about that point now. Like it actually does have relevance, that it's like if you didn't have to impress anybody, if you could just be you and look for the ways that you could just bring joy and play into your life, how might things go differently from that place? If there wasn't a need to fix how this was showing up in your life, but you could just be you and just enjoy yourself, and allow that place, that foundation, to sort of be the way that you create joy and play out in the world. What does that create for you? And it's cool because I've actually been in that thought process the last couple days of like, hey, what does this look like for me? So I'll share with you a few places. When I actually thought about this afterwards of like, hey, what do I actually enjoy that's like fun and playful in life? Well, first of all, there's a lot of things, right? On the grander scale, like I love to go on vacation. I love to travel. I love being with people. I love having conversations where I get to just like connect and be in laughter with others. There's probably I like, like I like going to comedy shows. All these things show up for me, in that way. But then it's cool because I actually think of it on a smaller scale, and I think that this is really important. If you just think of your everyday life, how can you interject more play and joy into your life? And as I've kind of sat with this over the last couple of days, a couple of things have shown up for me. One is music. Like I really enjoy listening to music, instrumental music, electronic music, music from different cultures. When It's kind of no surprise because music it can be a very uplifting thing. It can be something that kind of is an energy generator. So again, it's like such a small thing, but it does create that for me. um, learning learning brings me joy. One of my qualities of being is seeker, and I see the connection between seeker and learning. That like I'm sure that there's sort of a belief out there that it's like, oh, that can't you can't connect like learning to joy and play. Well, the thing for me is that oftentimes when I'm learning things, it sparks creativity. It gives me a new lens of looking at life. And then so from there, it's really cool because learning allows me to really expand on the life that I'm creating. It allows me to expand on who I am authentically showing up in the world as. So to me, it's a gateway point to that joy and play. And of course, another place is laughter. Heather and we've been watching The Office. We're like 10 years late to watching The Office, but like, man, such a good show, and I think it's like these little things that really can be meaningful. It makes you feel connected. It makes you feel, um, it just makes you feel alive in a sense. So that's a place to look for sure is like, hey, where can you start small with this? I'd love to hear, whether you're catching this live or on the replay, like what are some small ways that you bring joy and play into your life? Um, Cool. And then the other piece I want to speak to in this is noticing where you're coming from being when it comes to joy and play. So again, here's the really interesting thing is that yeah, like as an individual at this time of my life, work has been something that it's been full, right? I work a full-time job, I have a coaching business, that takes up a lot of time. And yet so I could sort of stay in that place of work sort of being the focus. Once you factor in work and family, there's sort of not a lot for much else. But the thing to really speak to here is the being of who we are. So in this breakthrough that I'm creating with joy and play, it's really an embodiment of it, a noticing of like, hey, how can I practice, how can I be more play and joy just in my daily interactions? How can I show up this way as a coach in my coaching session? How can I bring a little bit more lightness to those conversations? How can I bring more lightness to just the conversations that I'm having out in the world? A great example is, I connected with another dad at the swimming pool yesterday, where our sons know each other. And again, like that interaction could have gone one of two ways. One, there could have been zero interaction, or me engaging from this place of curiosity, of lightness, of like, hey, like this is an opportunity just to like connect with somebody. What a cool place to just to come from this place of being. And so when, you know, this is the thing that I really want to drive home is like when we think about bringing joy and play into our lives. I imagine that with the guilt, the frustration, how things have gone, we're often going to be like, okay, how do we like hit the home run on this? How do we make some massive change in this? And maybe that's what's needed. Maybe a real shakeup is required here. But oftentimes, I would also imagine that like it's these small things. It's the way that we're being. It's the things that we interject into our day-to-day lives that are really going to like move this needle forward for us. So really a place to look. Who are you being? Who are you coming from play and joy just in your daily life? When you notice that like, hey, I'm being kind of serious right now. I'm being sort of rigid in how I'm approaching this situation. Can you stop and take that breath, slow it down for a minute, and just like recalibrate yourself? Interesting place to look. So, Ricardo, I'm going to speak to what you said here, and thanks for jumping on. So, Ricardo, you're saying I admit that I always put work first and then incorporate joy and play after the fact. Sometimes work is so demanding and stressful that there's no energy for the joy, and my days off are spent recovering rather than trying to have joy. Totally. I get that one. Me too. Oftentimes the weekends, that's been a place where I've been recovering my energy as well. Um, and and yeah, and I think there's a part there of like allowing that to be. Hey, this is a part of the circumstance here of like you work a full week, you need that time to recover. And so, first of all, of like allowing that to be, not making it mean anything, about yourself or like, you know, um, not making yourself feel like, oh, like it should be a different way. First place to look, right? You're doing things perfectly fine. And okay, so like from here, what do you see? What are some of the opportunities that are here for you to just empower that joy and play a little bit more? So maybe when you do feel rested, how do you see this playing out for yourself? Are there, maybe some activities that you want to partake in or people that you want to connect with? But again, sort of coming back to what I was speaking to before, like, what if this can be easy? What if the access to joy and play comes from the simple things, right? From the things that you like to do at home, or um, let's just start there, right? Like that's a place to look. Ooh, knocked my space bar and went down on the page. So yeah, really appreciate you sharing that, Ricardo. I really think that that's probably relevant for both myself and a lot of us. Um, yeah. So I'd love to, any more questions that you guys have. Again, if you're watching this on the replay, and there's things that you want to share. Again, this is not a one-way street. I would love to hear some of the ways that you're creating more joy and play in your life. And yeah, if you have questions, feel free to bring them. If you have comments, if you're like, this is crap, I don't want to hear that, bring that too. I'd love to hear it. But I think that in life these days, life is full for a lot of us, and allowing for joy and play to be just as much a part of our lives as our work and the day-to-day activities and all of these things, like it just creates for a more fulfilling and meaningful life. So hopefully this was helpful. Again, thanks for, if you took the time to watch this and be a part of the conversation, like thank you. I truly appreciate it. And yeah, here we are. Have a great rest of your evening, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.